It's actually a separate legal entity within Nyhart, and it's for helping employees not only build up retirement income, but then actually draw it down after retirement. And I think the thing that makes it different is healthcare costs are a big part of anyone's retirement, and we actually determine that on an actuarial basis based on the location of the individual using the tool. So it's a neat feature that we have. Flip to page 5. Briefly, the actual equivalent. So that's what that term means is it's a set of assumptions that actuaries use to convert forms of payment to other forms of payment, if you will. So in this plan, we calculate the pension formula for an employee, and let's say it's $1,000 a month at age 65, and that's payable as a joint survivor annuity. Well, if this plan had lots of other options, like let's say 100% joint survivor annuity or a life annuity with a certain period, we would use a mortality assumption instead of interest rates or an interest rate to determine those other forms of payment. Okay. This actual equivalence lawsuits, what's going on around the country is essentially lots of private plans have sort of outdated assumptions, and they're being sued by plan sponsors are being sued by participants, essentially saying the benefits they've been given have sort of been less than what they should have been because of these outdated assumptions. They're using a mortality table that's old. It's saying people aren't living as long as they really are. I bring this to your attention so you're aware of it. Your plan doesn't really use actual equivalence because there's essentially only sort of 2 payment forms in it. If a single person retires, they just get a life annuity, and when they pass away, the benefit stops. If a married person retires, they get what's called a 67.5% joint and life annuity or joint life annuity, and then once they pass away, their surviving spouse gets that continued on. But there's no conversion, there's no using of this actual equivalence. The only time it might come up is if a qualified domestic relations order comes into play. And then we need to use actual equivalence assumptions to determine how to split benefits between a participant in the plan and their ex-spouse. Okay? We're providing the town with a plan document now, and we're going to set the actual equivalence in there to a more up-to-date standard. So that's, again, sort of the reason I mentioned it, in case you hear out of the news. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. On page 6, more pertinent to you guys, is the Society of Actuaries, which is our sort of governing body from a professional standards of practice standpoint, has recently performed a mortality study. Okay? Mortality studies are fairly rare because to do or complete a credible mortality study, you have to have lots of lives, lots of people in it, you have to have lots of deaths. Okay? What they did is they took public employee data from all around the country, both public safety like fire and police, and then also non-public safety, so town, waterworks, school, teachers, etc., whatever else fits in outside of non-public safety. And they performed that study, and what it shows is that essentially public employees are living, in general, longer than sort of, I think, what most people think they're living. Okay? We're using right now the Society of Actuaries' most up-to-date mortality table that was released, but it's based on a group of private sector employees. Okay? The public sector specific table shows employees living longer than the table we're currently using. And so what that means is probably July 1,
public sector employees, that you have studies that show that they are living longer after retirement than private sector.
Longer than currently expected. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say necessarily, certainly not every group. Like, I said this to a group that included fire and then police people in the room, and they thought I meant like they're living longer than regular employees or whatever. And I said, no, you're just living longer than what we currently are assuming. Okay. The current mortality table we use, again, is based on just private sector employees. It's sort of the latest and greatest. But these public employee tables are showing that public employees broadly, again, all groups, public safety, all groups, are living longer than even this private sector table. And so what that means is we're going to, as a firm, we're going to review the table, make sure it sort of makes sense, if you will. But we will likely recommend moving to that table on July 1 of 19, which means liabilities will go up, and costs of the plan are expected to go up. Okay? Again, it's not included now as of July 18th. The study was not released until late 18, if you will. So that's why it's not included, and we always like to take a chance to review it if it's going to make sense to everyone. Okay?
Yeah. So how much are we going to lose and gain over the last few years?
So projections suggest that, I think we did it just on this year's data, that liabilities will go up about 3% roughly, so.
A one-time shot, and then we'll continue.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. And it's, you know, it's a discussion standpoint, if you will, because meaning, I don't think right now I'm telling you we will absolutely go to it, or that you absolutely have to go to it, but it is, again, sort of the latest and greatest, sort of the best assumption we can make. Again, it's broad, national public employee data, so it's not necessarily specific to Rhode Island.
Right.
And so I understand the thought on it maybe being different, if you will. But again, I think there is a salary weighted table. There's lots of different versions, so we'll take a look at sort of what makes sense and talk to Chris and tell about it and pursue next year. Okay. Highlights. So on page 7, asset performance. So again, I sort of skipped it. I apologize. This is a report or a summary, if you will, based on from the July 1 of 2018 results. Okay. So we did an annual evaluation. We'll do another one again July 1, 19. So these results are as of July 1 of 18. So asset performance lower than expected. So what I mean there is asset performance from July 1 of 17 to June 30th of 18 was lower than expected. Okay. Recommended contribution is slightly lower than what we had expected it to be. It's about $6.1 million for the upcoming year. So we projected out a year in advance to give you guys time to budget for the year. Okay, so the contribution, actuarially determined contribution for the period ending June 30th of 2020 is about 6.1 million. Okay, and the funding percentage increased from 64.6 to 66.8%. We expect the recommended contribution to continue to go up with payroll. That it's designed to do that. It's a level percent of payroll methodology that we use. Again, we are drafting a plan document. Again, these new public plan account tables I just mentioned, we'll take a look at those.
40% plus 3% for
The contribution.
10%.
Oh, the 3% was on the liability part, so
Right.
that won't all flow through to
Alright.
the bottom line. It'll be a portion of it. I'm thinking it right. I think it's essentially will be sort of 3% amortized over like 20 years, so it's not the full thing.
So are the recommended contributions lower than expected or lower than scheduled because payroll was lower?
I think it's primarily due to sort of the natural flow of employees, if you will, because we expect anybody who's of retirement age to retire because they're at sort of the maximum point of value, if you will. But a lot of those employees don't actually retire, they continue to work. So it's possible we'll sort of see that, you know.
So it's the impact of the
Typically,
retirements of some of the people who Sean last year left, like in the last year and a half, who were hired, like in Terry's office. Is that?
It's people not retiring.
It's people not retiring?
Yeah, because if you've got a bunch, there's a lot of people who've met sort of the retirement eligibility for
So then it's the opposite.
several divisions, yeah, so we expect them to start retiring and then they don't. Yeah, so we expect a larger contribution because of that.
We had a few people jump ship lately.
That happens.
Better opportunities.
Sure. Looking at page 9 now, so the contribution recommendation, so it's comprised, any year we determine this contribution, it's comprised of 3 components. Okay, there's the cost of benefits actually being earned by employees. There's this amortization piece, so how much is the plan underfunded? We take that and we sort of fund for over 20 years, and then there's a little bit of interest due to just timing, right? We're determining this as of a certain date, but it's not going to get paid for some time in the future. Okay. Plus the blue bar is that the employer normal cost, and again, normal cost is just a fancy actuarial term for cost of benefits. It's akin to, you know, if someone says, how much do I earn from my employer every year? We would say you're essentially getting 13% of pay from your employer. So sort of you can compare that to a 401k plan. It's not apples to apples, but that's the intent. Okay. That's just the employer piece, though. The employees obviously put in some. It's what ranges from like 10 to 12%, something like that. So total benefits employees get ranges from like 20 to 22% on average. And the on average piece is important to mention because your new employees, who's 22 years old, they cost you like 0.5%, 1%. They're very cheap. Okay. If you're 54-year-old a year away from retirement, they cost you 35. Okay, so it's yeah. So the range is maybe a little narrower than that, but that's the idea. Okay, younger employees are less expensive typically. Flipping to page 10, the contribution recommendation, this is just broken out by division, okay, between police, fire, the school employees, and then municipal and other. It's a breakdown, I think, Laura and now Chris used just to sort of allocate costs between the divisions, but it's the same total as the prior page, just split out by division. Okay. And we allocate that based on employees. We say, okay, the police employees, we expect them to earn X amount in benefits during the year, and we allocate that just directly to the police. And then each division gets sort of a portion of the unfunded liability. That's sort of split pro rata, if you will. All right. Page 11 is the funded status of the plan. So this is how well the plan is funded. And it's just a straight comparison of liabilities we calculate compared to assets. The red bar is the liabilities. The light purple bar, we will call it, is the market value of assets, and then the darker blue bar is the actuarial value of assets. The difference between those numbers, the market value is sort of truly what was in the bank as of July 1 of 18. The actuarial value is a smooth value of assets. So we look at asset performance over the previous 5 years, and we smooth in performances, asset performance. So if the plan earned 15%, we don't actually fully recognize that 15%, we sort of take it in over time. And the same thing with the plan earned minus 15%, we don't take that full loss in. The idea is to try and keep that actuarial value of assets more smooth, so it's not jumping around a lot. So your contribution recommendation is jumping around a lot. Okay? So that's the difference we'll see. So we'll see it jump around a little bit. The fact that the actual value of assets is higher than the market value of assets means assets have actually performed worse than expected over the prior 5 years. Okay? Because the assets are lower, but we're saying, oh, they're actually higher, we just haven't sort of had to fully recognize all those losses. Page 12, cost of benefits as a percentage of payroll. So this is, again, the employer's cost of benefits, how much the employers are paying, how much the town is paying, compared with the employees. The employees on average pay 8%, and that 8% is not exactly the 9 to 11 I was mentioning, because this accounts for people we expect to quit during the year or retire or die. Okay, so it's sort of an actuarially determined number. And then the employer cost of benefits, again, is the town's cost, is that same 13% is offered. So in total, it's about 21% of employees. Page 13 is a historical look, or the few prior years look at what the town has put in for contributions as compared to what the actually determined contribution was. You can see, I think every year it's essentially been met and overmet. So we're on the town's on a good path. The funded percentage is gradually, increased up. Yeah, and I think it's expected to continue to do so, but those contributions gain. As a dollar amount will continue to rise, as a percentage of payroll, they should stay relatively flat. From a cash flow standpoint, looking at page 14, it's always sometimes a little bit of a concern for pension planning rules, but it doesn't need to be. This is just the expected benefit payments that are being made. Cash going out of the plan as compared to cash coming into the plan. I think the cash flow is still positive, compared to total contributions when you count both employer and employee compared to benefit payments out. And that's a good spot to be in, just gives you a little bit of sort of leverage there. If it gets the other way, it's not bad or wrong or anything, but you make a benefit payment, so when the assets go down, but so do the liabilities. So higher benefit payments aren't necessarily a bad thing, it's just something to be aware of. When we work with asset advisors, they sometimes have to see the projected schedule of benefit payments to kind of use some cash flow actually. Look at page 15. So asset reconciliation again from July 1 of 17 to June 30th of 18. On a market value basis here, we started with about $84 million, paid out $5.6 million in benefits, added $6 million in employer contributions, $1.5 million in employee contributions, had an investment return of $5 million, and then ended up being at almost $91 million in June 2018. The return we calculated is very simple, so asset advisor might tell you something slightly different. I would expect it to be similar. Yeah, we said 5.9%. We're expecting 7.2%, so in that snapshot year, the plan's assets earned $1.1 million less than expected. So again, just in that one snapshot, we'd say you'd have to put in $1.1 million extra over time. Again, hopefully this year or next year, you're gonna earn 12%, 13%, something above what we expect to sort of balance that out. But in that 1 year snapshot, about $1 million. And then annual investment return rates for the last, 7 plan years has averaged about 6%, which again is a little bit below that 7.2% bogey that we are using. That 7.2% bogey comes from the asset advisors. We had a conversation. We and the town, probably through Laura, had a conversation with them and said, hey, what do you expect your assets to earn sort of long term? And they said, we came back with 7.2%. It used to be 7.5. We dropped it to 7.2. So over the past 7 years, again, there's a 1.2% difference. Essentially, probably about $1 million short, roughly, over the last 7 years. So over the last 7 years, the plan's earned about $7 million less than expected. Very roughly. Those are the funding results. That's the funding valuation. That's the report that, again, we create to tell the town how much you should fund cash-wise. Good time to pause for a moment. Any questions?
That 7% was many other organizations who used something around, they used high 6 to low 7%, so it's not like we did something overly aggressive in our planning.
No, and in fact, it'd be, to me, I would use the word conservative. The lower you use that, the lower you make that expected return on assets. But no, the 7.2% is very much in line with, I'll say, expectations in other governmental entities and broadly, even private sector for your investment. So yeah, it's not too high or too low. I think the 7.5 started to feel broadly and look maybe a little high, which is why we prompted the question to have the investment advisors sort of take a look at it.
We'll take questions after we do the whole presentation.
Thank you.
So yeah, so it's dropped to 7.2%, but no, it's very much in a solid spot. It's not too high, too low, and from our standpoint, it looks good and based on what we see in the investment mix, but we're not a true asset advisor, and I think it's right or not, but it looks very reasonable based on that investment mix.
Any other questions? All right, so part 2.
Yeah, part 2, a little shorter probably. GASB 67 and 68 results. So this is the accounting report we put together. So this is for the town's financial statements. Okay, this is still just the pension plan, but this is for, again, the period ending June 30th of 18. We will do this report again annually, and do a June 30th of 19 report. But as of June 30th of 18, we said for the town's expense, for the income statement, if you will, for the fiscal year ending 6/30/18 was $8.4 million, and that's on the far right-hand side. It's comprised of several components: cost of benefits earned, expected return on assets, just the general time value of money with interest on liabilities, and then sort of a long-term running total of outflows and inflows. And what that essentially is term gains and losses. So we were just talking about asset performance being less than expected. Well, we expense part of that shortfall and we recognize the $1 million roughly that we were short. We say, okay, we expense that $1 million, but we expense it over 5 years. So that's part of that inflows and outflows. There's a couple other categories. Demographic experience is better or worse than expected. Maybe pay went up more than expected. So then we have expense items like that as well. Again, total of $8.4 million as of period on 6/30/18. Looking at page 19, the balance sheet liability. How well was the plan funded as of 6/30/17, 6/30/18? The net pension liability, the red number, so that's how short the plan is, we would say. As of 6/30/17 was about $52 million, and then at 6/30/18 was about $49 million. So again, increase in the funds and the plan became better funded. If you're looking at this later when you're bored and can't remember everything I said, the assets should be the exact same between the two, looking at GASB 68 and the funding valuation, okay, at six, because they're at the same point, 630, 18, 718. That total pension liability though will be slightly different, okay, and the reason is for GASB, it's usually needed a little bit sooner than the funding valuation, so we do what's called just a roll forward. We take the 7117 liabilities, and it's based on census data as of 7117, and roll it forward a year, okay, but it should be pretty close. 139, 140 million, call it 630, 18 or GASB, under the funding valuation is 140.8, so about $1 million exactly higher. Okay, but you will always see that little bit of difference. It's just due to time. All right. Lastly, so we do a projection every year to guide the plan on, exactly how much we expect contributions to be increasing over the coming years. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we expect it to go up for the fiscal year ending 2021 to about $6.6 million, and this is before that potential mortality update, again, due to just timing of when we created this projection, when this mortality update came out. For now, I would plan and budget on that $6.6 million, but again, I know it's possible we see a little bit of a change there due to if people don't retire like we would expect. And again, that's the reason for the jump in the percentage of payroll contribution as well, going from 41.9 this fiscal year in 2020 to 47.1%, and then essentially right in the middle of the chart there, about 5 of it from the bottom. That's the reason for the jumping, and we should expect more people retiring, so receiving the benefits.
And it levels off for a while after that, right?
That's correct. And then if you flip to the next page, page 22, or prior page is 21. I'm crossing out on mine electronically, so you guys can do the same. The projections. So what we see here is just general trend, right? It's gonna, as a dollar amount, trend upwards. Okay, the black line is if assets earn 7.2% as we are expecting, if you will. The blue line says, okay, what if we earn 6.2%? We're pessimistic about it. As you can see again, what the contributions do, they're a little bit higher. And then the red line says, okay, what if we go like gangbusters and earn 8.2% for the next however long, forever? Quite a bit of a drop in contributions, and then in the data table below at the bottom, we've got 30 years of contributions there. You can see the difference between the three projections. If we only earn 6.2% for the next 30 years, we pay $208 million in total. If we earn what we expect, 7.2, we pay 153. If we earn the 8.2%, a lot more, we pay about 126 million. The big drop off there, let's just focus on the black line there in 2034, approximately 2035. In 2014, we said the plan was
38.
I'm sorry.
2038, and it's with the drop off, right?
Yeah, and I'll look at the valuation report right now because I think it's going to be a little bit earlier again, just based on when we started finding it. Yeah, so in 2014 we looked at the plan and said the plan was underfunded by it was maybe like $45 million, let's say. And we said, okay, we're going to take that $45 million and we're going to sort of create a loan almost, and we're going to pay that off over 20 years. Okay. So it's a big piece there, if you will. And then the next year, we did the same thing and said, okay, the plan's now $48 million underfunded, and we're scheduled to pay off roughly $45 million. So we got to take out sort of a second loan for $3 million, so sort of a second mortgage, almost, if you will. And we build those layers on every year, but that first year, again, is very big because it was the whole thing. The subsequent years are really just fluctuations and gains and losses, assets performing better than expected or worse than expected. People earning pay larger than expected, whatever it is. So they're a little bit smaller, but yeah, anyway, we expect it to drop off there in 34, 35, if you will, because the first one we set up was July 1, 2014. The appendix, has certification, some participant information, some of the inputs a little bit more, but we decided to put that in the appendix. Happy to speak on it or answer any questions about it, but it's a little bit more of the demographics and the plan provisions and assumptions, if you will. thoughts or questions on the pension plan?
So overall with the percentage, it's in that mid-60% range.
Yeah,
What is that?
67%, it's on page 7 there. Oh, yeah, I think you're looking at it too. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was on some pages.
Right here.
Yeah. Yeah, the one we certify to. For
Yeah,
the-
when we first started this, when it was right at that 59%, then there was difference to but
Yeah,
Just over
we're
60.
slowly.
yeah, so I've only got back
Well, the
to,
state-
59.6 or
And before the
60.
state steps in.
right, so yeah, exactly, so I've only got back to 13 here, but yeah, it was 57.6% on the actual value. And I refer to that measurement because that's how we determine the contribution. And yeah, we've gone up to almost 67%, so we've increased by almost 10%.
Any questions? Comments? Any questions or comments from the public? Yes.
I'm looking at the returns of this plan, and it's made roughly 5.8% over a 4-year period, and about the same thing over a 10-year period. Why are we assuming 7.2%?
Again, not to try and pass the buck, but just our expertise only extends to sort of I'll almost say maybe the liability side of calculations. There's an asset advisor for the town, and their expertise suggests, that I think that 7.2% is a reasonable return of assets. As to exactly how and why they get to that, I apologize, I just can't speak to it.
Okay, you must have a bunch of clients though, right? Is this
We do.
Is this an okay return? Is this below average? Is this above average? What is this?
Which return are you talking about? What they've actually earned? Or what
3,
we're
5,
expecting?
and 10 year. Their actual returns of 5.8%.
It's in line with what we see. Again, if we look at the past.
I show it's in the bottom 20%. Do you agree or disagree with that? Of public plans.
Off the top of my head, for really all plans, whether it's public or private, again, looking at the same period, obviously, same July 1 to June 30th period, it's not an outlier. That's off the top of my head. I'd have to, for the clients we work with in the public sector, I'd have to really go back and look at specific data, but off the top of my head, it's not.
So
it's not
you don't ask them that, and they don't ask you that?
I don't ask them what.
The advisors, you don't ask them where they fit, and you don't monitor where they are?
Unfortunately, I guess I'll say is asset advisors and actuaries and I'll say the client in this case is the town obviously here aren't typically in the same room, but we have lots of clients we work with that are on all sorts of measurement or fiscal periods, July to June 30th, calendar year, etc. And we see enough of those that while we would never refute additional data points, we see enough again to suggest that this is not out of line from a performance standpoint, and we would defer to that investment advisor. The investment advisor and/or the town who sort of, I'll say, has the fiduciary responsibility to hire that asset advisor, and if they see that they're underperforming, the asset advisor should be providing that information that says, here's where our benchmark is.
I just wondered where you guys are. You don't have any idea where they are compared to everyone else?
No, I'm saying they are not an outlier from off the top of my head, from what I remember of our other public plans.
And I have a second question, if you don't mind.
And the 7% is something that we discussed.
Yeah, and then the 7% again.
And now we could,
You're 7.2 now, right?
People could, change that. We could get advice from our finance department. We could say, we could lower it, we can change that. There's times that people increase that, so.
Who decides that? Is that the board or the council?
It's usually, Sean, how do we actually decide that? We usually take the recommendation from finance and then we would go forward with it. Yeah.
If I could add to that real quick, one important distinction here is that each trust has different asset makeup. So it's hard to just blanket statement, this interest rate, this return is good or bad or compared to other.
I'm talking about the town plan.
Right, no, I understand that, but if you ask, compared to other plans, every plan has a different asset mix and therefore has a different expectation for return.
Question?
Yeah.
If you did change that from 7.2 to 6.2, what would happen to the numbers up here? we'd end up having to pay more from, the town would have to pay more into the
It
plan.
would be approximately $20 million more
The town would have to pay more to the plan.
over time, yeah.
I just want to, I wanted to understand how it works with the different interest rates and make sure that everybody also knows that if you drop that, then we pay more as a town into the plan.
That's correct.
Okay.
And what if we don't contribute the number you've recommended, the 6 million, for this next plan? If we don't contribute that because we don't want to spend the money or whatever, what happens to our plan? Are we pushing it on the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you put in zero this year, let's just exaggerate, you put in zero this year, you're putting in $6 million less this year, that's $6 million short, shows up next year in our calculation, and we would amortize it over 20 years. But yes, yeah, if you start taking contribution holidays, yeah, it's just.
So the question about contributions relative to payroll, I noticed that nationwide, that's 20% of an average payroll. For Narragansett,
Nationwide, I don't know.
I have it right here, but Narragansett is 42%. Do you see that as out of line, or is that par for the course also?
In the public plan realm, I wouldn't say it's far out of line. I mean, it's certainly higher than typical. Certainly, I mean, it's a significant expense, and again, that's a product of the plan being underfunded. Within the public plan world, if you took all plans sort of we work on 7, 8 plans in Rhode Island, just sort of looking at those alone. If you said they were all fully funded though, and then they were only contributing.
We don't have that in Rhode Island.
I understand, I'm just saying if you look at that real quick, the contribution each year would be the cost of benefits being earned. And again, this plan, I'm telling you, it's 21% split between the employer and the employee.
You're talking about normal contributions, I'm talking about total contribution.
I understand.
Plus the,
But it matters.
so
on
why
how
are we
well-funded
at
the plan.
43% compared to the rest of the country at 20?
Again, I'd have to review what you're reviewing, but my point is there's two pieces to the cost of the contribution every year. There's what's actually being earned during the year, which is about 21% in total, 13% goes to the town. And then it's how well funded it is. So
we're way
Yeah.
underfunded and we're catching up.
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm guessing, and I could be wrong, that study that you're looking at nationwide,
It's NCPRS, it's
is
the
it for public
National
employees?
Public Retirement System Survey,
Okay, again,
dated October
to
2018.
give a full answer, I would want to look at it, but
4 years
But again, it
ago,
just
4
depends
years
on how-
ago, the state was gonna take over
yeah, I mean,
the pension. You know, 4 years, we came up 7%.
But 10 years ago, the ARC, it was, not the ARC, but 10 years ago, the actual contribution was well below 100%.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you were
Funded.
only doing pay-as-you-go in this
10,
town.
I mean.
You were
so
only
we
doing
were- So
pay-as-you-go.
right now, we are trying very hard to increase that. We were at that borderline 60% number. I kind of feel when I first started this whole thing, and we had someone on the council who was had a lot of financial expertise, and she was a great asset on the council because she really focused on the pension issues. And, but we slowly had to build up to the 100%. Sure. Because it would have been a huge blow to everybody if we had gone from these very, they were, and again, I don't remember, but it was, I feel like it was around 50% being funded, and so we went to 80, we did 80 for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and worked our way up.
That's
So,
like 50, 60, 80, 100, something like that.
yeah, right, so, and it's hard to do the 100, I mean, it's a
Isn't it
balance.
state law, Matt, to
Right.
do 100?
I don't know if it's state law.
It was.
The state came in when we were at that 60%, we were like at 59.6, and that's when we had to show them a plan for what we were gonna do.
The ARC, I mean,
The
that's
ARC,
100%, yeah, pay 100%.
But I don't think it's a state law that you have to pay 100%, because I think there's emergencies in which people.
Yeah, you can get out with an emergency, yeah.
But yeah, so that was, we kind of have been
Right.
slowly digging, so that's why I was focusing on the 67%. So we're
Yeah.
about 7% better than we were at that 6 years ago.
Well, we have been playing catch up.
Big time.
Yeah.
There's no lying here. I
Yeah.
think for 10 or 12 years, the pension was short funded. Really short funded. I don't even know if there's a contribution being submitted of what we really needed to put in. So from where we were to where we are now is huge. And we're on a projection to be at a certain point where we will be where we need to be by, whether it's 2032 or a sooner date than that. But again, as everybody knows, 100% on pension sometimes isn't enough. Sometimes you need to put in 110%, because at any certain amount of time, depending on how it flows with retirements, hires, or whatever, that fluctuates. That amount fluctuates drastically. And you're not gonna learn that course in one day. It takes time to go through those calculations. So again, we are making improvements of getting to the goal that was set.
Chris, at the time that this all began, when it was at that 50% mark, there was a history of each year's contribution to the pension. You went back pretty far. So any council member, if you want to look at that, you know, I know that Laura had that, you might have to compile it, but that's something that's helpful because you see, you know, how low it was and then how it was, and really it's just a number, each year, like what percentage it was. You probably have that somewhere. Yeah, I don't want to give you a homework assignment, but
Chris, if you don't
I know
have it,
I know it's there.
If you don't have it, I have it.
Yeah, you have it, okay. So then the council members can collaborate with the,
Anytime.
Yes, Richard?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that the pension committee has to be extremely involved with the percent of assets to liabilities, however you figure the liability. Because the tendency is to look at asset return and total assets, and the tendency of a town council is to look at payment as it affects this year's budget. There isn't really a mandate that people look at the percent of assets to liability, and this is where this is how you get into the situation we were in 8-10 years ago, and somehow the pension committee, I think, is the one that has the most to lose by having this drift away again. And somehow I think the charge should be, that charge should be included in the committee's charge, because somebody has to be on the lookout here for that figure, and if you were to put it in your charge, you would take it in your charge. So I think this is the defect we have, is that we've got a positive momentum going. Well, we had a great momentum going 20 years ago, and it went, whoop.
And it went down because people didn't put into the pension plan. It's the prerogative of a politician to decide not to fund it. And that's what we gotta watch against. Now, that isn't the job of the investment commission, unless you want it to be the job, Matt. We've got a new ordinance.
The 20-year retirement several years, you know, and that hit us also was a problem too, and that was something
Early
else.
2000s.
Early 2000s. So there was a lot that contributed to it. So, all right. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, so thank you. Do you have anything else to wrap up?
Oh, yeah, real quick, just broadly overall, I mean, the pension plans, you know, I say 67% funded on its face, maybe that doesn't look great, you know, you see the contributions where they are, at a large percentage paid, certainly they are in payroll. Looking at it, I think we, as actuaries, are using very good, very reasonable assumptions. The two biggest assumptions are mortality and interest rate, and as of now, we're using the most up-to-date mortality we can, and interest rates in line with what the asset provided we think we can get. And whether the plan is 67% funded, yes, it's lower than maybe one would like, but it's trending in the right direction. And as long as the town feels like they can make the recommended contribution this year and in future years that we forecast, there's not really any significant concern. If those contributions start to be deemed as unattainable, then we would say, okay, we've got to start looking at levers we can pull, which is essentially the only one we can pull is spend being provided to the district. So from the council's perspective, again, if contributions start to become unattainable, we've got to start reducing benefits. Otherwise, we will start trending back the other way. We start taking, not being able to fund the whole time. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you both. That
How
concludes the
about
work
OPED?
session. Oh,
We're not gonna do OPED?
Do you wanna do OPED?
Yeah, Brian's gonna talk about OPEB, if you guys have time, if you want, that's up to you
oh, I'm
guys.
sorry.
Take care,
I
Andy.
missed
You
that
gonna
in
stick
my
around for the council meeting?
Carter's the pension expert, I'm the OPED expert. I have a much shorter presentation, I can go through it quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Um,
I
it's okay.
apologize. Yeah, no, yeah, so we have, but just remember, you also be presenting, yeah. Yes, please do
entirely up
OPEB,
to
I'm
you.
sorry, yeah, no, do it, yeah, no, do it,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So again, much shorter version. If we can just kind of jump to page.
No, don't rush, no, we got time.
Okay. Well, page 3 is kind of where it starts. Yeah, there we go. So these are kind of like we like to start with this slide for the OPED to talk about some of the key drivers of the liabilities for the OPED. The healthcare trend in the upper left corner is a fancy way to say medical inflation. So we're, part of our assumptions for OPEB that are different from pension are that we assume the medical expenses for retirees will increase over time, and that assumption is a big driver of the liabilities. So that describes our assumption there. In the lower left corner, the discount rate, we're required to use a blend of the full 7.2% return on asset assumption versus bond rates, which are in the 3.5% range. We're supposed to use a blend of those based on when we project the trust to expire based on your funding policy. And because that, so we're using 7% for accounting, and that's very close to 7.2% because we're projecting the trust based on your current funding policy to expire in, I believe it was 2056. So because of that, we're able to use almost the full 7.2%.
Is that an election year?
I need my calculator for that. In the upper right is another important driver of the liabilities for OPEB. That's what you're paying for your retirees. And finally, the bottom right is the eligibility and duration. There's different negotiated eligibility requirements. Some might have shorter service requirements, some possibly have longer, and that's the longer the service requirement is before they collect it, the less likely that employee is going to retire and collect benefits. So just something to keep in mind if there's ever any design changes or anything like that. The next page, we break it down to changes in the liability for the OPEB. And as you can see, we started July 1, 2017 at $43.7 million. We expected just through benefits and interest that the liability would move up to about almost $45 million. In fact, we had a pretty good year and it dropped to $40 million. We increased the discount rate from 6.6% to 7%, so we got a gain in the liability for that. And your actual premiums during the period were increased lower than the 8% that we assumed. So we also got a $2.7 million gain, decrease in liability because your premiums didn't go up as much as we thought. So we're sitting at June 30, 2018. Yeah, that's a typo, sorry about that. That should be June 30, the bottom left, it's June 30, 2018 at $40 million. And then on the right, we just kind of break down the numbers so you can kind of see what the liability represents for, when we say active, those are current active, but we're projecting them, so when they're retired. Their pre-Medicare liability is in the 8 million range, and they're once they become Medicare eligible, the benefits they're receiving then, we're saying is in about the 3 million range. So you can see that a lot of the benefit is before they reach Medicare eligibility. Now the current retirees are a different matter entirely. As you can see, the Medicare eligible retirees are a pretty big chunk. And then we show total retiree and again the total. TOL is the acronym Total OPEB Liability. Next page, no actuary report would be complete without some bar graphs, so just to kind of give you a visual from the prior year to the current year. We added in the FNP is a financial net fiduciary net position, that's your assets. So you can see that as of July 1/17, the assets were about 5.3 million, now they're about 6.9 million. And the net OPED liability is 33 million. And so that's decreased from 38 million the year before due to the liabilities coming down and the assets going up. The next page, we show the projected pay-go costs over time. And there's the actual numbers in millions on the bottom there. So we're a little over 2 million right now. We get to about 3 million in about 6 years. And this is without any changes to the plan. And this is based on your current population. And it's going up to 4 million in about 2042, give or take. I should mention that this chart is based on a sort of a snapshot of your census, of your current census. Okay, so this doesn't include an assumption that there will be new hires as people terminate employment or retire. In reality, they will be replaced by new entrants. But as far as our routine valuation, we just project the pay-go cost based on the current population. This would be as of June 30, 2018. But we do a special project for you guys. We do 30-year projections on what we call an open group basis, which is we do assume new entrants. So this is a much more accurate projection. If you're making financial decisions, you're going to want to use a projection where you do assume new entrants coming in. Your current funding policy is to contribute the greater of $3 million for the pay-go. So if we go to the next page, those bars are showing the greater of 3 million for the pay-go. So you can see for the first, 7 or 8 years, it's the flat 3 million, and then as the pay-go moves above 3 million, we're assuming those are your contributions. The solid line at the top is the actuarially determined contribution, the so-called ADC. So what we're projecting right now is funding less than the ADC. On the next page, we show what the expected pay-go and the expected funding would be if we funded the ADC. And again, now you can see the ADC line is level, and where the ADC, the bar, the dark bar drops below, that's where the pay-go goes above the ADC. And then the next slide is, again, the same projections, 30-year projections. Now this is the funded status, and this is based on the current funding policy. And you can see we're getting to a little above 60% after 30 years. And the next page shows if you were to fund the ADC, then you can see you're getting closer to 80%. And I think an important takeaway, the bottom right corner, if you fund the ADC, by the year 2048, your funding percentage is dramatically greater than the current funding policy. And you've actually contributed over, if you add up all the contributions, no discounting or anything, just add up the contributions over the 30 years, you actually contributed $4 million less.
It's massive return.
Yeah, so you get the benefits of return on assets by contributing more earlier. This is our disclaimer. I think there was the same thing in the pension. Just kind of, this is what the basis of our projections is, and we just want to make it really clear what the basis of the projections are. Page 12, again, this is more of a disclaimer on the what the previous numbers before the projections were based on. It's the June 30, 2018 GASB 7475 actuarial report. And kind of threw this in there for next steps. I know you guys have some CBA, potential CBA changes coming up. So I think Carter would agree that any changes would, we're gonna need to incorporate into.
Yeah, think about what the first year would be that we would start to see the more projections, the change of after 65, we were not providing the healthcare for the new hires. So that started several years ago, but obviously we have to wait till people turn 65. So it'd be interesting to see what year those first projections will come in. So when we can, guys, you could just think of that.
Sure.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
It's still gonna be far off, but.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna take some time.
Right, right, but I just think it'd be nice to know when
Okay.
the first projections would start to say, not having the town have to pay for healthcare for a retiree after age 65, we'll start to have a budgetary impact.
Right. Okay.
Matt, I have one last question on this, same as the other. You went from 6.6% to 7% on your assumption you said recently.
Yes.
Who decided that and how was it decided?
So it's a combination of, again, sort of the same answer Carter gave. The 7.2% is, we generally get from the investment advisor.
Is it the same investment advisor?
I'm assuming it is. I don't know for sure.
Does anybody in the council know who manages the trust? The OPEB trust? Nobody in the council
Yes,
knows?
we do.
Who's that?
Thank you. We're gonna conclude the work session, all
The
right?
finance director, yeah, finance director.
No, she does have a funds recommendation.
Okay.
Not the
Okay.
OPEB.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Chris.
Not the
All right,
pension.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys.
Sorry, I missed one.
Jessica, you're right.